Good morning. Welcome to the 16th day of November 2016 and the Good Life Meditation. So today's entry constitutes a major version upgrade. We're going to remember this is a human operating system, so it's subject to upgrades, major and minor, when changes are made. Minor upgrades, of course, are when changes occur to the constituent parts within the framework that I already have, the 3 principles and the 3 objectives and the 9 principles, or the other bits that float around it. Whereas a major upgrade occurs when I add either a new objective or a new principle. And I'm actually going to do just that. I'm going to add a new principle. Actually, it's a familiar principle for anyone that's been, hanging around on this channel for any length of time. Back in Japan, I talked a lot about something I call the path of wildness. And I'm going to add the path of wildness to the principles, probably just after virtue. And I've got a reason. I'll explain that when I get to it. And it's interesting that it's come so late, because it was the first thing that I began talking about with regards to this stuff. So welcome to the club, path of wildness. So the other piece is that I'm changing things up a bit in terms of the distribution mechanism. As you may, I guess you will know if you watch this video, I upload these to YouTube and then I share them out via social media. And what I've decided to do is at the very end of the day, or maybe the morning after, when I have a fresh mind, I reflect on the day that happened and point out the challenges that came up and how I was able to either successfully or unsuccessfully handle those challenges and move through the part. Full and complete stop, Kurt. There we go. So that's coming up. So look for that in the social media feed, as well as at the very top. It'll be basically titled as the journal entry, followed by the Good Life composition part that I do during lunch. It's turned out to be quite a production, this thing. But fortunately, it's not a lot of work. It's pretty easy to do because it's leveraging all the time I had doing this type of stuff when I was living overseas. So let's get on with it. The good life for this day. There are 4 pieces: the affirmation of human and civil rights, followed by the statement of my objectives, followed by my principles, followed by my plan for the day. Oh, and a rotten day forecast. I guess that's 5. So the affirmation of human and civil rights. These are a reminder to myself that whatever I come up with, whatever plans and decisions I make, I need to do so with a mind towards preserving the rights of others and of other groups. Not that I have a particular power in that capacity, but as a voter I do have that power, and I need to exercise that accordingly. So that lays the foundation of the whole thing. That everything I do needs to be with a constant mind to the well-being of others and the rights that they hold, as distinct from privileges, which there is a difference between the two. Rights are, as founders of our Constitution like to say, they're inalienable. You can't take them away. You can't take away one's right to, for example, free speech. Although we do constrain it in some ways within reason, but for the most part, it's something that you can't limit, nor their right to practice their religion. Again, with constraints. You don't want to, if your religion involves, child sacrifice. I guess that's an important distinction to make. There's no absolute even with the rights, right? There's no absolute right. Interesting. Whereas privileges, and I guess the person that left the comment yesterday indicating that they're kind of the one and the same is right in that regard. That the privileges are simply a more tightly constrained, but they're not rights. The privileges like privilege to drive a car or the privilege to own property. These are privileged to be a resident of a state, for example. Interesting. I need to explore that more. When does a right devolve into a privilege, and vice versa? In any case, where we describe a privilege as a right, I need to respect that. Yet, at the same time, keeping in mind open to changing that if necessary. Thus, the capacity to amend the Constitution of the United States. Boy, well, I've really gone down a rat hole with this one, but that's the whole purpose of this, right? That's why I do this. This is my opportunity to explore what's important to me. Explore the stuff that forms the guideline, the framework of my life. That's why I have this, roughly an hour in this contained box as I drive to work. At the start of the day, I want to use this in a constructive way, and I think it's an important thing to do, to go over my philosophy, so to speak. Moving on. So the three objectives. The first of these is the objective of developing and maintaining good principles. That's the 9 and now 10 that I'll come to in just a moment. And that again is what I do in this morning exercise and through the course of the day, but it's really distilled down to this. It's amazing how this exercise really is helpful in that. I went from 6, which I held on to for over about a year. I didn't move from 6, and it wasn't until I started verbally recording these that I began to make motions towards 7, 8, 9, and now 10. Gosh, I wonder how many I'll have ultimately. Well, not much, because I'll be dead. I'll be dead tonight, so I guess this is all I'll get. The next objective is the objective of executing good emotional reactions. Basically, being on the alert for the rising, what the Stoics called the pre-passion, that initial flush and sense of anger, frustration, love, passion, greed, avarice, whatever it may be that rises up in you. In catching that, and instead of running with it, deciding to control that and at least temper it through the activity of temperance, which is the action of managing our emotions. And I like to imagine that as consuming them, nibbling on the emotions, so that I can taste what it is, and then use my faculty of reason and my better sense of judgment, the best I've got, to execute a flash plan of what to do. And of all the things that I do, this is probably the most, of all the things that I've laid out in my little thing here, this is probably the one that I engage with most day to day. Every day at work, I run into opportunities to exercise good emotional reactions. I also run into that opportunity at home with my wife and daughter, in the community, on the freeway. It's a very powerful faculty to possess, and it just gets stronger with exercise. More about that when I get to temperance, and less about that when I get to temperance, because I've already covered some of it now. The third objective is the performance of good actions, just doing darn good things according to my principles. And they're not willy-nilly things. They are very well defined in terms of guidance. It's not that I have a list of pick up trash, smile at people, hold the door, pay my taxes, vote responsibly. It's not that I don't have to itemize that at all. I simply have to remind myself of my principles and then live according to those, and I'm going to basically wind up living a good life, or doing good things according to those principles. Now let's move on to the 10. Woo! Hands on the wheel. Principles. The first of these is the atomic principle. Everything in the universe is bits and pieces, atoms, molecules, subatomic particles, not in that order. All of it in the end is energy. And these things are flowing and changing, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, and manifesting themselves as new and different things. And that you and I, our composition and constitution, is a result of the instantiation of the molecules and the atoms of which we are a part right now. We are basically a house of energy, and that's as fragile as a sandcastle, and will very, very soon fall to pieces. And reminding myself of that every day helps me to be ready for all that to come to an end, and drives me to more immediate action and more deliberate living. kind of like the acceleration onto the freeway. Let's go, let's go. Time to die, time to live. 2, the principle of nature. Everything in the universe has some nature. Even the energy in the universe has a particular nature. And it's a worthwhile thing to spend time cataloging that. Like yesterday, I was walking through Costco. My wife asked me to pick up some coffee. And so I decided, I was driving by Costco, so I went through Costco. Walking through Costco with holding the coffee, and I decided to get a big bag of paper towels. And I was saying, what is the nature of this warehouse? I was looking at the warehouse, and I was staring up at it. And I noticed that my attention was drawn to the details of the warehouse, the incredible volume of space that a Costco wholesale retail establishment has. And I noticed it has the nature of being large, voluminous, lots of capacity. The aisles are unmarked. Goods are scattered everywhere, sold in bulk, crowded. A sense of urgency, a sense of accomplishment in knowing that you're going to get a good deal. Those are the things that the Costco, the nature of Costco, part of the nature, the connected nature. The nature of Costco is also part of it flows from the people that are within it. So our anticipation, our sense of thrift kind of stems from that. It has the nature of being kind of a big event and an exceptional event, and as a result, it's an exceptional place in the minds of the character of the people, minds of the people who experience it. And therein lies the nature of Costco, as distinct from the nature of a large building or of the goods that are available within it, or the people that work there. It's a combination of all of it. Likewise, that's kind of an abstract one, but likewise, we can look at the nature of everything and look at the nature of the dawn, for example, that I'm looking at right now. The dawn, the nature of the dawn is to come twice a day. Twice a day? Once a day. Once a day to attend immediately from the east with ambitions towards the west, to bring forth light or at least illumination from the dark, to usher us from sleep, to be a regular occurrence and to hold a sense of promise in the more poetic sense of ourselves. A lot of this comes back to our impression, I'm just realizing that the nature of things, there's two characters of the nature of things. There's the absolute nature, and it's a applied nature, or it's implied nature. So the absolute nature would be the actual character of the thing itself. For example, the nature of the dawn is the arrival of light and the appearance of our sun across the eastern horizon, as well as other characters like that are independent of the observer. Whereas there are characteristics to the dawn that are dependent on the observer. For example, the sense of promise of a new start, of feeling warm and happiness that comes from that. It's interesting. I have to characterize those more. Independent and dependent. Maybe I could say that. Dependent qualities and independent qualities of nature of things. Interesting. I'm going to work on that. 3, the social principle. It describes the fact that some animals, including human beings, are social animals. And as such, we live, work, play, and in general exist better with one another. And even though I'm not a very social individual, I recognize and wish to be a good social member of my society. And as such, I relish the fact that I get to go again this morning to a job that is relatively mundane, some would say boring, very much a worker bee in a great cog and machine. Yet, I know that my efforts will have true and real dividends to not only the employees of this state, but also the people that those employees serve. And as a result, it's a very distilled form of good, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity to do this. It's part of the reason why I'm increasingly becoming aware that I will never retire. I will stay at this job until they wheel me out on a on a wheelchair or a gurney. Because it's a very useful end. Very social end. Next, 4 is what is that? Oh, gee, just some breaking news. Interesting how that. Anyway, I'm distracted thought. A reminder of something I read about the news of the day. Anyway, I'll go off a rat hole if I go down that thought. Anyway, 4, temperance is the application of application of restraint with regard to the emotions of the day. So, like for example, I'm suffering a strong pain right now in my right hand. Don't know exactly what I did. I remember I did something yesterday. It may have been during my swim. I think I pushed off the pool wrong or something. It's hurting a lot right now, and I actually can't hold the wheel with it. It just kind of came on all of a sudden. And I'm exercising temperance insofar as making myself continue to drive, think, and perform this, and I guess so, this video, while letting my hand rest to the side and not getting upset or distracted by it very much. Not that I should be too upset about it. Gosh, talking about it that way, it sounds like such a first world problem. You get a little pain in the arm. I know there are people suffering en masse and dying elsewhere, and I'm cognizant and aware of that. And like I said before, with the social principle, I'm trying to do my best to be aware and to participate in the best way that I can in bettering those things, while at the same time the issues that I face in my own life, although they may be trivial in comparison, are very real to me, and it will impact the success of my activities through the day if I allow myself to run away with any of the seemingly trivial circumstances and events of my day, such as my hand hurting, or the interruption of my workflow today, or the application of new projects or deliverables to my existing projects. These are the things that I'm dealing with, and these are the things that I have to manage in order to be a more productive and better social member of society. And that's why temperance is important to me. Temperance gives me the ability to gives me the strength and the readiness and the preparation to handle the challenges that I face, however trivial they may be, so that I can remain on task and on target to pulling my weight as a member of society and as a member of our species. 5 is agency and indifference. Agency is any life or the product of life. Agency is, including plants, even though they don't think. They are agents insofar as they exert some will upon the world and change the world in ways, and their presence reminds us of life. It's a very distinct thing to go to see a rock in the desert that's a bare piece of volcano lava, and another one that's got a bit of moss growing on the side. It's a strangely comforting reminder that life goes on to see that, and that's agency. And there's also something that I call the artifacts of agency, which are the things that agents create that are not themselves alive, but reminds us to them. Some might call that the evidence of the agent, in a way. I gotta watch my speed. I'm going 75 in the slow lane. That's because I've got to maneuver out of this lane up here. This whole section of the freeway goes up the side. I had to get around that car. So, dial it back, Kurt. There you go. So that's what agency is. And agency is a very comforting thing. It's why we like to be social, because we're around other agents, especially sentient agents like our fellow members of our species. But it's also comforting just to see agency in general. Going to a park, for example, surrounds us with agency. Attending a concert, being at work with our coworkers, of course being home with our family, all these things. And when we don't have them, we can comfort ourselves with the artifacts of agency, like television or radio, or reading a book, or just enjoying a leisurely drive along a freeway where we're surrounded by all of this. What's interesting is, though, when you take away agency, you're left what I like to call the great indifference, which is the fact of the rest of the universe. The vast, vast majority of the universe is without agency. And some might call it cold, sterile. Yeah, sterile is the right word because it's without life. That cold, sterile indifference is rather intimidating and frightening. And so what we are wont to do then, and this is where the cautionary note comes in, we are apt to apply agency where it doesn't really exist. So we say there are gods and gods. There's God and gods. There are spirits. There's witchcraft. There's the supernatural, the ghosts, whatever the case may be. Anything at all, even if it's malevolent, is better than nothing. And so we create whole pantheons of infrastructure of supernatural agents that are the fates and the controlling forces of the universe. And boy, doesn't that work out nice, especially when they turn out to be lawgivers and they tell us what to do and how we should live. Then that really helps out a lot. And then we don't have to do the thinking for ourselves. Lots though, you pay a high price for that though. We'll come to that a little later when we get to virtue. So next is the best seat in the house. The best seat in the house is a reminder that I make to myself that instead of wanting to be somebody else or work somewhere else or be another person altogether, I'd rather want to not want to be someone else, or not want to have a different job, or not want to live in a different place or have a different circumstance. I'd rather just not want those things and be all right with whatever I am or of God or whatever circumstances I'm in, all the while working to improve my lot. That way we live a more satisfied life along the way, from moment to moment, instead of having our satisfaction arrive as punctuated happenstance when things happen to go our way. The moment that we buy a new car, the moment that she says yes to our proposal, or the birth of our child, or whatever the case may be. So we live these long, interminable stretches in between, being dissatisfied with all of those aforementioned, our circumstance or our place or who we are. So instead, I train myself with this principle to look at everywhere I am and say, this is the best seat in the house, even though I've got a nosebleed from the high altitude, or the fact that I'm sitting in a rusty old outhouse in the desert and the seat's just broken and I'm plummeting into the poop below. Still the best seat in the house. I don't know why I keep coming back to that particular example. I just really like the idea of plunging through an old outhouse into the crap below, and being satisfied with that. There's a story from the Stoics about the one man sentenced to, who wasn't sure of his fate. He's in the dungeon, and the emperor's going to decide his fate, and he's down there, and finally the emperor decides to execute him and sends the guards to take him away to do the deed, and they find him playing a game of dice or something like that with one of the guards in the dungeon. As they drag him away, he's exclaiming happily, "But I want all of you to know, just remember, you see, I was ahead, I was winning." That is the epitome of the best seat in the house, while being drug away to your death, yet being in the moment and all right with the circumstance that you have, because that comes from a recognition of what we can and what we can't control. There's nothing you can do about it in that circumstance. There's no way he's going to get out of that death. So he instead musters his energies towards the control of his emotional reaction to that circumstance. Very, very, very much the principle that all this is about. That I play my hand there, that I am borrowing heavily with all this from Stoic ideas. So now, 6, reason. Is that right, 6? Whatever it is, it's reason is the next one. The governing faculty, the way we look at the universe, we gather the facts, we make conclusions, tentative conclusions, and then observe the results. And if we're wrong, then we change our model. If we're right, then we hold it tentatively and continue monitoring. And then we are making progress step by step towards improving our understanding and our model of the world. it's a very important and powerful way of looking at the world, the best tool that humanity has yet uncovered for discerning truth. Much better than dogma, which has no iterative reaffirmation and examination. It simply is what it is, and should be avoided whenever possible. The next one is virtue, which is the principle of virtue. Virtue is the not the governing faculty. Virtue is the purpose of life. Virtue is what I define as the improvement of human well-being by doing things that objectively improve things. Like, for example, deciding how to improve the quantity and quality of water available to people in our society in a sustainable manner. The efforts to reduce the cost of energy and the cleanliness of energy in terms of being green and sustainable for our planet. Improving the availability of education and the cost effectiveness of giving and getting an education to children, young adults, and lifelong education in our society. Improving the ability to communicate with between the sexes, between the races, between the nations, and even improving our place on the planet by providing enough ecological preserves to ensure that nature can continue its way, because we are simply living within a vast greenhouse of nature that has to be sustained for us to sustain. We can't live without the rest of it. So all these things, we can argue each point about the details of how we're going to do it, and then come up with an agreed conclusion and go forth and do it. And that is, to me, virtue. Virtue is defined as that process. Next is the willful management of time. Willful time management. Hey, I remembered. I don't remember that one usually. Oh, wait. No, I was going to do, before I do that one, I was going to add the new one, which is, this would be number 9, which is the path of wildness, which is an old one from the Japan days. And I'm going to go quick because I'm at 27 minutes. But the path of wildness is nothing more than a process. It's a weird esoteric title. It sounds kind of wooey, but it's not. It's a process that I use to get myself unstuck in life. So when I get to a point in life where either anxiety or ignorance or whatever the case may be is holding me back, and the first response is to relieve myself of the ignorance through education. But if there's not enough time to do so, if I need to make an immediate choice, then what I'll do is I'll simply I'll gather the facts that I have at the moment, exercise my reason to make an evaluation, and then use my gut feelings, turning to the gut and jumping at an option, and recognizing all the while that the jumping at things on a gut basis is prone to make mistakes. You're just as likely to jump into the fire as out of the frying pan. And I do that as a way to simply get unstuck. Because a lot of the time I've found that in life that my gut feeling is usually pretty good, or maybe I just get lucky. But if I really do look at the facts around me, and if anything, at least I wind up unstuck. And there's very few things in our modern first world life that are going to wind you up dead, leave you dead. It'll just leave you maybe broke or more broke than you are, or in a weird circumstance, but at least you're moving, and then that momentum will carry you forward. It's a great danger in life to get stuck. There's so many temptations to make us sedate in one place, one career. I almost hesitate to say one marriage or one relationship, because that's something a little bit different. I mean, as long as there's no real precipitating reason to exit that, there's a lot of motivation and a lot of room for improvement. And if you once had something common to get together with that person, unless that has been is no longer true, unless something has happened to violate that, there's a lot of room to improve that, especially when children are around. A lot of reason to find a way to make it work. But anyway, I digress. So I'll talk more about the path of wildness as we go on and as I have more time before I run out of memory on this one. So there we go. The path of wildness, way to get unstuck from life. And then finally we come to the willful time management. This is simply nothing more than preparing myself for the day in terms of how my thoughts will proceed, and as well as how my actions will proceed. So let's get to it. Today's thought plan is 4 pieces. First, I'm going to collect my thoughts before breakfast, compose them over lunch, record them after dinner, just in time to die before bedtime. Excuse me. And now the action plan for today. It's a busy day, particularly at work. I'm going to continue my drive, nursing my hand. I'll be a careful drive. When I get to work, I have to clean through my email, which shouldn't be too much. Then I need to prepare for a 1 o'clock meeting 2 o'clock meeting that I have actually been running for more than 2 years. But actually, today's the first time that I'm handing it off to someone else. So I'll be more of an observer. So I don't have to prepare so much. More of an observant thing as I kind of hand this off to someone else. Pulling away from that, but I still have a very, very busy day today. Lots of stuff to do. I need to get busy on the project plan for Project X, and which finally we have our decision makers have decided from the three courses of options that I laid out for them. They've decided on course B. So I've got to lay out a project plan for that. I have to assemble the team, get them hauled away in a conference room for a couple of hours, so I can get all the details of how we're going to do that, lay in the levels of effort, figure out who the players are going to be, yada yada yada. That's going to take a lot, but all the while I need to be pursuing a whole bunch of action items for Project Y, where we are going to. It's a huge, giant project, and I have a lot of early deliverables so that we can formulate the bigger project plan with my co-project manager. Throughout all that, I'm going to. I've got my lunch. I plan to work very hard. I plan to not be distracted by unnecessary things, or be lured into gossip or wasted time with chatting with folks, or certainly not on my own cube wasting time. It's very important to me to be very diligent, work hard, and make a good effort, make it a worthwhile day for the taxpayers who pay my salary. They want to get more out of me than they're paying for. They get a good return on their payment for my salary. That's my thought. That's my plan for work. When I get home, as I drive home, I'll relax a little bit, listen to some podcasts. When I get home, have a nice evening with my wife. I'm going to restrain having my beer until after dinner, because I think that's going to be better. I can talk more deliberately. I did that last night. I usually have 1 beer in the evening, but even 1 beer, I'm a lightweight. It kind of clouds the mind a little bit, and I think I prefer to wait until after dinner. I had a really good conversation with my family last night about Elon Musk and the partnership with Elon Musk and Microsoft regarding their development of the general AI and the impact that might have. It was very interesting. Yumiko is engaged as well, and which is really nice. I want to continue that more, so I'll be searching through the day in the news towards things that I can talk about with them. Got to finish up now, so then I'll get to bed and die, and then I'll take the dog for a walk up too, have some quality time with him, play with him with the ball and the thing. Anyway, then the rotten day forecast. My wife is going to die. I'm going to die. My daughter's going to die. The car's going to break down. I'm going to meet lots of difficult people, lots of challenging situations. There's temptations. I'll be gossiping about my coworkers and my family and friends, and bragging myself, doing all kinds of things to disgrace myself and belittle myself in the eyes of my peers. My reputation, my legacy will all be lost, and all that before bedtime. Then I'm really gonna die in earnest. Okay. There, I can just get better from there, right? Okay, that's it. 33 minutes. I better stop. Have a wonderful life, and a really, really good life. It sounds backwards. You know what I mean. Take care. Bye bye.